Well, once upon a time in Laredo, Missouri, a farmer traded a small tractor for a tiger, and I believe he had it for about 3 weeks before the sheriff's department decided it was best that he give that tiger back to a safe sanctuary and not keep it chained up at his machine shed.
When it comes to wrestling, there are a lot of guys that know the sport, they know some moves and they know that, but they just don't know how to train. And that's what really, I think, made a difference when Keenan started to getting into the spirit, the word of training. And that's when it began in the 8th grade year. And he and Donnie and all those other guys, that came in that time period, some great guys that won state titles and individually and teams and won a lot of state trophies for us. That was the thing that I think really kind of brought success to our program, is that emphasis on training. And, when you have that, it does make a big difference. And, again, it can happen father-son, it can happen in any program. When guys learn to train, that's when the program really moves.
But they were just mean, just mean, kind of tough guys. And that was a big difference for me, learning how to be mean with wrestling. But I'm wrestling Mauricio. I was a 12-pounder, and I think Mauricio was a 3-pounder at that time. It was my freshman year, I think. Anyways, I'm wrestling with Mauricio, and he's got a little chip on his shoulder. He's, kind of a veteran. I was the young guy. And I was taking Mauricio down, and he just starts, throwing these back at me. And it gets to a point I had enough. And so I take him down, he throws one, and I start going off on the back of his head. And so he kind of like MMA jiu-jitsu rolls to his back so he can punch upwards. So we're going at it. And Dad comes over and he can get out of here. You're going home. I've had enough of it. So I'm like, I didn't even start this. So I go to the locker room. I start taking my shoes off, and Mauricio comes in the locker room. Why do you get to go home? What? I have to stay here. Why do you get to go home?
Went to the first week we went to Bulgaria, and I just remember being in Bulgaria like, okay, yeah, this is cool. And we're getting ready to wrestle a duel, and I don't really know what's going on. They're just like, we're just going to find some guy, you're going to wrestle him. I'm like, okay. And being the little cocky, arrogant guy I was like, well, I'm going to put on a show because I don't know who these people are. I'm never going to see them again. And so I wrestled this guy. He wasn't that good in the first period. This is back when there was 2 periods. I 5'd the guy, and I'm like, heck yeah, sweet. And Cox's like, hey, all right, don't do that again. If not, they're going to send somebody good after you. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And I 5'd this kid again. So we go along on the tour at a different part of a town, and we're getting ready for this duel. And this huge, monstrous guy looked like he was the dude in Rocky IV. And I was like, who the heck is this guy? And they're like, Cox's like, that's the guy you're going to have to wrestle. Well, I'm like, nah, they're not going to put that guy against me. Well, sure enough, that was the dude I had to wrestle, and I was like scared for my life. And he was like their university champ or their world team guy, and I was 17, and 2-piece singlets just came out, and I had one. I don't know why I had one, and I'm wearing it, and he looks at me, and he grabs my shirt before I even step out there, and he goes, slaps me on my chest like I'm some scrub, and I'm just like, oh my God, and I'm like scared for my life. And I just somehow, it was the clinch, and I somehow just kind of played possum and stayed away from the guy, and he tried to lock on me, and I scored on him. And then the next period, he actually shot on me, and I threw him to his back, and he was actually pinned, and they wouldn't call it. So anyways, I win the match, and afterwards, this guy throws a fit. He literally picks the ref up by his suit jacket and his belt and picks him up in the air, and I'm like, oh my God. And I just literally take off. I think I ran a 4.2 that day. And I ran behind Cox, and I'm just like, this is your fault. You should have told me that this was going to happen. And, yeah, so pretty much long story short, there was a riot. Like, he legit was throwing the ref around. People were coming out of stands. So we legit run to the bus, and I'm on the bus, like, scared for my life, like, sweating. I still have this ugly New Mexico two-piece on. I'm like, first off, I'm like, Coach Hag, why'd you even give me this two-piece? Like, I don't understand that.
So, and I could already feel something wasn't right. You know, I kind of had butterflies, but they were some weird butterflies, you know, and so the bell rings and we come out for the very first round and we tapped hands and right after he tapped my hands, he threw a vicious kick that hit me right in the head. And I remember spitting the blood and going this way. And I thought, man, that sucked. And I came back the other way and he threw a right hand and it caught me the other way. And I could see all the people all the fans talking to me in slow motion, and my mouthpiece had fallen out, and I was stupid, and I went after my mouthpiece.
You know, they just got to find a way, in my opinion. Like, it's never gonna be ideal right now. You know, like, yeah, you can't get into your high school wrestling room. Yeah, you can't get into the weight room. You can't get into a gym. But no one's stopping you from pounding the pavement, going on runs, from doing stance and motion, push-ups, pull-ups. You got to get creative.
Probably say the guy that I don't want to say disliked wrestling the most, because it was just probably the only match I've ever gotten like just thoroughly beaten. I wrestled Dan Dennis one time at Midlands when he was out of college and I was a freshman, and I think he tech falled me. I mean, it was like ugly. I felt like I grabbed a hold of him, tried to like move him, and he didn't move. Like, I was like, what is happening? I've never had this happen before. And he was one guy that, you know, that I was like, oh my gosh, this is what man strength feels like. Cause I remember looking at the bracket and he was on there and it said Dan Dennis, Iowa. And I'm like, surely that's not Dan Dennis from like the NCAA finals a couple of years ago. Like, that's somebody else. And I hadn't seen him in the tournament, and I was like, whatever. I won like my first two matches, and then I had him. And I looked, and I was like, oh my God, there he is. That's him. Yep. I was kind of like, I thought it was not him, and it definitely was him. So, I think just knowing that because I gave up, you know, first takedowns or, you know, even 2 or 3 sometimes, and just knowing my mentality was first off, my goal was 10 points or more every match. That was the goal. Whether I didn't care how many he scored, I was going to get 10 or more. And then, you know, just knowing that it's just it's a 7-minute match. It's a long time. You know, people probably think it's maybe short, but I was always a big person on it's a long 7 minutes. You know, he's going to have to stop multiple shots if he's going to be in the match.
Did it feel like whoa, I'm at the World Championships, or did it feel like once you got there, it's like, oh, it's another wrestling tournament? What was that like?
It's definitely my favorite tournament that I've ever been to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. It's just like when I wasn't wrestling, like I was watching people that was like I watch regularly, like on YouTube, and so it was just real surreal. The most surreal thing I think was when I was wrestling at Mo West in the 8th grade, we went to Tulsa, and Jordan Burroughs was giving autographs, right? Mm-hmm. On like got doubles hats. He had all this like cage fighter stuff, and that was really cool. And so fast forward to me and Gino working out at Worlds, and like Team USA is there. I'm like, yeah, this is definitely weird. It's not like a normal thing, but yeah, with Jordan and James Green and all those guys working out on the next mat.
Well, I appreciate the compliment, but here's what I say: I'm more like Match.com. Right? and joking half the time people are like, what's your secret? I don't have a secret. I go, oh, Zeke Jones is really good. Right? And think about where I've been. Everywhere I've been, I've had good people Zeke Jones is really good. And wait, the university is really good. And our administration is really good. And our academic program is really good. And our Jim Blight's really good. So and I go, and you're really, and so, oh wait, and there's other good people around you. So it's like, it's not that hard to match them up, right? I mean, I'm simplifying it, but at the end of the day, that's what my job is. I know recruiting Dom I was at Old Dominion Dom's senior year, and I was chasing him, and I remember him running from me. He tells the story pretty good. He ran. I saw him at Fargo, and I'm running. I'm like chasing after him. I'm like, I was trying to get my hooks on it. He had wanted nothing to do with me. And so all of a sudden he sits down you know, in Fargo, he sits down and starts eating, and I sat at the table. I'm like, got you now, you know. And
I think it's not like what you know, it's who you know and those relationships. And everywhere you go, you meet like these amazing people in our sport. Like I think we're a big fraternity, a small but big fraternity. And I think along every place I've gone, I've always met like really good people and stayed in contact with them, which, you know, led to different opportunities. You know, when I was at Missouri Valley, I started going to Mo West and doing that. And then I met Spencer Mango at Fargo one summer when Ryan, I think, was like a freshman in high school. And then Ivan Ivanov said, hey, why don't you come wrestle Greco? I mean, I knew what a headlock was and an arm throw, and I was terrible at it. So, you know, and then that blossomed into going to Northern Michigan and meeting a lot of great people there. And then going into the Army and wrestling for the WCAP program and doing that. And then when I was in Colorado Springs, I met Joel Sherritt, which he was at Air Force, and I took a volunteer role there for a season. Then he went to Navy, and then obviously Navy for 4 years, and now at Stanford with Jason Ray and Alex. And I think it's just, I don't know, I've just been truly lucky, and like with the people that I've met, that I've been able to meet the right people to teach me how to be a better coach and a better person in our sport. Because I don't think necessarily it's what you've done in the sport. You know, I don't think being a Olympic champ or an NCAA champ or something like that makes you a great coach. I think what makes you a great coach is caring for your athletes on a daily basis, not just wrestling wise, right? Like we want everybody at Stanford to be an NCAA champ and Olympic champ if that's their goals. But the most important reason of getting athletes to go to college is to graduate, become productive members of society, get jobs, get married, have kids, and repeat the cycle. And so I think that's what's most rewarding for me. And probably that's a long-winded answer to your question, but yeah, I've just been truly lucky to meet a lot of great people that I can kind of make my coaching, you know, Bible, I guess you could say.
So Lindenwood was transitioning to Division II at the time. So when a school's transitioning to Division II, they have to go through 2 years of probation. I just finished my junior year, and they made the decision to go Division II. So the next 2 years, they would have not been able to go to the NAIA National Tournament. So that would have been my red shirt. I hadn't redshirted yet, my red shirt and my senior year. So my career was basically done at Lindenwood.
Okay.
So I started looking around. Word got out that I was looking to transfer, and I was looking at Maryville, and I had some other coaches reach out to other schools like Arizona State, Iowa State, and I think Binghamton reached out to me. And Jake Diefenbach actually wrestled, right? And so he was at Lindenwood, and he did the same thing that I did. He wrestled at Lindenwood and then transferred and finished his career over at Oklahoma State. So Jake Diefenbach was a plug, and Mercatani was also a plug. He was over at Merrimack. So I get a call from Eric Guerrero, and he says, hey, why don't you come out to Oklahoma State? We'll check it out. I didn't really, like I said, my heroes were just the guys that were older than me. I really didn't care about college wrestling. I just wanted to wrestle. Like I had a lot of fun. So I flew out there and I checked it out, and like I was blown away by the facilities. I was blown away about the history and everything. Like I knew who John Smith was, but I had no idea who like anyone else was. So I remember John sitting me in the office with my dad. Sits me down. He's like, you know who these people are? I was like, no. Like, you don't know who this is? Like, and he's pointing to Pat Smith. I was like, no, who is he? He's like a 4-time national champ. You don't know who he is? I was like, no, it's my brother. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. Like I was like green as hell. I had no idea.
2018, I believe, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a blood cancer. And so I had to go through 8 rounds of chemo just to get rid of it, and it was very aggressive. So I was pretty much quarantined for that time too. I could not do anything for about 4.5 months, and so basically, like, I just had to go through all that and then try to get back to like the next wrestling season. I felt like because I had a bunch of kids that were kind of relying on me as a coach and a practice partner. So the approach I had was like, this was going to make me stronger and make things different for me. Like, if I could beat cancer, I can do anything type of thing, right? So really advice I would give kids now is like, it's only temporary, and your body's like, you're still able to go out and do stuff. You can still run, like push-ups, sit-ups, do something, and you could make yourself better that way. You can watch film, you can do all sorts of things. Like, I wasn't able to really do much, and now I'm able to, like, not too long ago, I was able to compete at one of the highest levels. So it's not necessarily like the worst thing in the world that you have to, not wrestle for a bit. This, like, you can still get yourself better and keep grinding. It's just a different type of grind at this moment.
So there's a lot of uncertainty, and so it's time, and this is where, like, smart coaches obviously know this, but the phase is the lowest peaking phase of the year, and that's important because you're not necessarily in this mode where you're just in a kind of a where you can't get out of it, where you're just doing the same things over and over again. Lifting weights, running. Oh my gosh, I'm so bored. What do I got to do? Get in your manual, get in the written word, meditate, self-reflect, be critical. It's very difficult to be critical. We can be on the phone now. Get on the phone with your coaches. If you're a really good wrestler, people tell you how great you are, and they gravitate to you. Find somebody that's going to talk to you about what you need to do to really get to the next level. When there's unknowns, we didn't know COVID-19 was going to go down like this. And you deal with the uncertainty because we control the things that we can control. And the things that we can't control, we're not a victim. We immediately shift gears into problem-solving mode. The problem is there's a lot of uncertainty in this when you're talking about the next steps. And so what are the next steps? And that's why I talk about the things that it won't become mundane. That's why I emphasize the written word and the mental toughness routines and those types of things, and the self-assessments, because it's tough to assess yourself.
No, so it wasn't like in my mind, like, oh, I'm gonna, say like I want to eat ice cream on national television, right? The thing was, so Quint Kessenich came over to do the interview. Right afterwards, I'm like jacked up, right, high energy, and he's like, so like, what does it feel like? And I just kind of, like, like it feels good, I'm excited. Like, everybody, we've worked for this. My dad, my mom, everybody, we've worked for this. And he was like, so what does it feel like? And I'm like, still like super jacked up, but I'm like, I think he just asked me the same question twice. And
he does that.
Yeah, and I think it was because, right, like, in life, people like stories, right? Everybody loves stories. They want to hear stories. And the narrative surrounding me since my sophomore year was, like with the passing of my dad and everything like that, was that, oh, this kid has to win an NCAA title for his dad. Mm-hmm. And so, like, immediately after I won, my first thought wasn't like, oh, my dad's dead. Like, right? Like, that wasn't my first thought. I was just like super like happy. Yeah. And then I get to the interview and he reminds me, oh yeah, your dad's not here. And I'm like, you're right. Okay, now I'm about to cry, right? I was like, I think I'm about to start tearing up. And I was like, whew. And then he asked me the same question. I was just like, dude, I'm not crying on national television. Like, I'm like happy right now. So like my mind went to think happy thoughts, right? It was like, what makes you, my daughter's trying to sneak in the camera right now.
It's all good.
What makes you happy? And it was just like ice cream. Like, what are you going to do tonight to celebrate? It's like ice cream. And so then I was just like, I just want some ice cream, man. I just want some ice cream. And I was like, cut. Because I just like, I wasn't about to cry. Like, I was not, like, this wasn't a moment to cry. Like, it was like a happy moment. And
I've got a bite story for you that involves one of your
your guys' mentors there at Mo West. He was happened to be I don't know how many names I want to use here. He's now lead official for NCAA. He was my college coach, Mike Haggerty, of course. And we were wrestling at a tournament. And we had a guy on a team from Oklahoma who was really dirty. I mean, this guy was choking people out before we ever even knew what choking people out were. And we were wrestling at a tournament. This guy's name was John. John was wrestling. It wasn't unlikely when you're a turn for him to get called for unsportsmanlike conduct. I mean, you kind of accept it. That's going to be part of you're going to see at least one. Hag's at a different match. Ref calls a flagrant misconduct on John. Hag comes running across the gym to the official. What are you doing? Why are you calling that? He goes, Coach, he bit his finger. He goes, what do you mean he bit his finger? He goes, Coach, the kid's got blood coming down his finger. Hag didn't miss a beat. And you guys that know him see the veins come out side of his head, side of his neck. He goes, what in the hell was he doing with his fingers in his mouth in the first place?
I was actually walking down the hall at CBC High School, and freshman wrestling coach was outside, and he was trying to get people to sign up. And he was like, hey, sign up to the wrestling team. And people were just walking by. So, I'm like 88 pounds with a backpack about the same size. And I tried to skirt past him, and he ran over and picked me up. And he's like, hey, you want to wrestle 90 pounds on the freshman team? And I was like, okay, sure, I'm not doing anything. So I got my little permission slip signed. And then I remember the first day of practice, like it was yesterday, I was always a football player. So, I was just tackling guys left and right. And I remember the coach put me in a group of 4. And I was like, you want me to wrestle those 3 guys? And he's like, yeah. I was like, okay. So yeah, he's like, nice double leg. And I'm just, tackling them like I would in football. And, I kind of got hooked from there. I was always playing against guys that were bigger than me in football. And then wrestling, I got to wrestle against guys that were my size. So, I kind of took to it.
That was, I was just real, when I came back home, I was just real down because I went all this way and I wrestled 2 matches. If you lose, you're out, unless the guy that beats you goes to the finals. And I went halfway across the world and lost twice. So I wrestled one each tournament,
But that's an insane experience that, there's no other way you would get, and most people are never going to have that. You know what I'm saying? So that's.
I'll never go back there again. It's such an awesome place. The people there loved us because we're American, and they were so nice. It was a real awesome experience, and once in a lifetime for sure. But fortunately, I got to go to other places too, and I learned my lesson going there. My very first tournament, and I was talking to Bezick. I was like real down, and I was like, man, I went all the way over here and lost. He's like, yeah, that happened to me in my first 2 tournaments. They put all this stock in you, and they pay for everything, and you go there and you lose. You feel so bad. Like somebody paid thousands of dollars for me to come here and compete, and I just basically wasted their money. That's what I felt. But you got to train and learn lessons that you can't pay for. So I think it was cadet duels, and like you said earlier, I'm kind of ornery. I like to have fun. You put us in a hotel room, four dudes in each room, and I'm always bunked up with Shane Nay, be my brother, and usually Moyer. But I think it was cadet duels in Greeley, Colorado, and we're boxing. And we took the mattress and we flipped it up, covering the windows and the door. We're like having a full-on wrestling and boxing matches, and we're supposed to be in bed sleeping. It's like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. It's getting time where we need to have lights out. And Reggie comes down. He heard us being rambunctious and stuff. He's like, everybody get outside. So we're out by right in the middle. It was like the pool was surrounded by hotel. Because there's just doors outside. And Reggie called us all outside, and he's yelling at us and yelling at us. And I remember Randy Smith was yelling at us, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Get in the pool!" So we all like jumped in the pool, and he was just messing with us the whole time. it was fun, you know. Like we wrestled, also played hard, you know. We always had a good time. But,
all bad times have an end to it. Nothing's ever going to last forever. It's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. It's going to suck. I mean, it's all just kind of it's all a mentality, just like how that's set up. I mean, you're always going to be able to do something. It's whether or not you want to do it. It's the end of the day. Like, I'm a terrible runner, but even I have to go out and run with the guys that are good runners and do a half marathon or something like that, and it's miserable, but you can always still keep sticking it out and doing it.
And, but the one that really sticks out, you guys know Coach Ursland at Central Missouri. I was a freshman in college, and at that time, I didn't have a whole lot of big guys. We had Plowman, who was an Olympian, he was a freak. I remember him putting me in a bow and arrow every day, and Ursland getting pissed off at him for doing that. But one day, I don't know whatever got into Ursland. We were wrestling. At that time, I think wrestling with our GA, Larry Mano, at the time. And he was probably, 170 pounds, if that. And I remember looking over and out of the corner of my eye, seeing Ursland just staring at his knee pads. And I just putting them on. And Ursland never would. And then he's just staring at his shoes. I swear he was just telling him one more time, just one more, you know, because Ursland just, you know, walk around the room, stay on the side, kind of direct. He would never get in there and wrestle. It's the guy that had a hip replacement. And next thing I know was we're going live or something. And Ursland's like, Beck, you're with me. I was like, okay. I was thrown off. I was like, what is he doing? And I remember pull a Jesse Whitson special, snap him down. And at this time, the room had pretty much stopped to see what was going on with Ursland and I. And I snap him down. And at the time, in the old wrestling room, it was a raised floor with the wood on it. And I remember snapping him down, and you could just feel the vibration of the floor lift everybody up. And he just remember the old stop, drop, and roll drills whenever you were younger, teaching you if you're on fire, how to put yourself out. That's what Ursland looked like, was rolling across the floor. And I'm laughing so hard at this time because I snapped him down on the ground, and I think the entire room was. I remember his quote was, Beck, that was a good one, but you didn't score two because I didn't cover him.
I was off the mat for a long time, which I thought, and I think this whole social distancing and people being off the mat, some people would look at it as a negative, but as someone that's been through an injury and been off the mat for close to a year and a half straight, it just made my hunger so much stronger for the sport. And I think that this could be a good thing for some of the people that haven't taken time off since they're 5.
So my philosophy was always to teach our athletes and student athletes to become their own best coach. And that just simply means that you're with them, 2 hours during the day probably, and that you can get the best out of them. They're like, they're going to work hard. Very few guys are going to come to the practice room and not work hard. But what really makes a difference, obviously, in their life is what they're doing those other 22 hours. So my philosophy was always to help our guys become their own best coach, because they've got to ultimately make decisions.
Philosophy overall then would be build the box. And like Hag said, it's as freshmen and sophomores, there's probably a lot more guidance there. I know that visually for me, it's kind of like walking through a field of athletes that are like sitting down, I envisioned, and then they've got their hands up. And once they got their hands up, I'm grabbing their hands and walking forward. And what I hope to have happen is that they walk past me and take off running on their own. And at the end of the day, that's expanding the box. And so I always thought about how good a box are we building? Are we putting one that is fundamentally and foundationally sound? And if that box is strong enough, then at some point we just want the athlete to expand the box and hopefully blow the box up.
My philosophy was basically, I was a pirate. I stole everything I could from Coach Sears, my high school coach, Coach Collins, my college coach, friends and family, and anybody else, and picked apart things that I thought were good for me. Hell, I watched when I was in high school, I watched some tennis pro talk about visualization. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I
That was a part of it. Just stealing whatever I could steal to help me build a program, and then that program get built on appropriate expectations for each level of kid. If it was the youth program, they had a set of expectations, and you followed those expectations. And kids, I believe, will reach the expectation that you have for them as long as it's appropriate. You can't tell a kid that wants to be on the team that someday he could be a four-timer. He just wants to be a part of something. And those kids are important too. So I always felt that if I had 4 kids in every class, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, 4 kids, I would always have a pretty damn good team. So I graduate 4 that were studs. I've got, 12 more coming in. So, and then I have another 4 freshman classes. As long as I could keep 4 really good wrestlers, the rest I could build around with whatever else came in. And those 16 wrestlers total would make your other kids better. So my expectation level was trying to be appropriate for each kid.
So you wrestled in college for Gable, correct?
Correct.
And everyone knows the reputation of Gable being, extremely intense and everything. What do you think it would look like for Gable coaching a college team now? Because kids are just a little different than they used to be. Yep. Culture's a little different. What would that look like?
Yeah, I still think it'd be awesome as a coach because it wasn't just X's and O's. He took, and if you've ever listened to him talk, he inevitably almost always goes here. It's finding out what the individual needs of the guys were. And if you look at his squads, obviously he was known for those absolute grinders that were super intense and just after you like a rabid dog. The Brands boys, you know what I mean? And the list would go on and on, right? Those competitors. But I mean, you look, he coached guys like Ray Brins or Joe Williams, who were, if you're a bit of a historian, that were drastically different, and not only, maybe their mindset or personalities, but just even how they wanted to compete. And he found ways to motivate those guys and to make their style fit with his teams and what he was doing. So I still maintain that he would be a force to be reckoned with because he, work's still relevant, right? Like that's probably the part we all love about the sport. It's, you chose a tough sport and work really pays off. And he's going to work, he's going to work to find out what makes a kid tick, what technique maybe he needs to make adjustments in, motivate the guy. So I think he'd still be awesome in that way because you're not going to outwork him. And he was always based in what makes the individual guy tick and how can we motivate him?
Man, yeah, it's hard to pick one, but there's a lot of really cool places that kind of culturally shock you. Like, we go to a lot of Middle Eastern countries and Eastern Europe countries are like a hotbed of wrestling, but like place like Mongolia was pretty sweet, and it's like I didn't have the tournament I wanted, but I was like, after the tournament, I was like riding horses around these mountains and jumping on camels and stuff, holding giant birds and, in the land of Genghis Khan. Like that was a cool trip, even though like pretty depressed about not qualifying for the Olympics out there. But, you kind of got to enjoy all these opportunities internationally because crap, man, everybody I grew up with, they don't get to do this stuff. And all of us are kind of demand a lot of ourselves and we're not going to be happy if we don't win. But at the end of the day, like we got these moments, whatever level you wrestled on, you got these moments you got to appreciate like that.
Sure. It's a tough question, but like I said, I think when that happened, it made me want to achieve goals even more. It wasn't like, well, I've got to back off these things so I can focus on this. It was just like all my goals grew. I wanted to do everything better. It wasn't like I wanted to be the best father, first and foremost, obviously. But wrestling made me that person, a better person and paid for my school and those things. So it all kind of went hand to hand. It wasn't like I got to cut back on this piece of my life to focus on this. It was just, I'm going to attack every piece, as hard as I can. And I think Jesse will attest to that. There was a lot of not only wrestling, but, going back home and being a dad through college and still trying to pay the bills, working and coaching and do all those things. there wasn't a lot of sleep involved.
Yeah, I don't think anybody slept less.
Yeah, I think this is where you kind of separate. We had a little talk amongst our staff, the separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. Of this is a time where you can really make gains or separate yourself or close the gap or wherever you're at. I feel like the onus is more on the individual as of now, and that's cool because the better get better, and if you want to, you can. But
like our actual women's coach, the very first women's coach at Missouri Valley, he didn't know freestyle. So, and I didn't know freestyle. I didn't even know it existed. And, but we learned. We went to Sunkist International Tournament. It was in October. It used to be, they used to have a competition every year, and we learned the rules, by trial and error, and went to Missouri Valley, in the early 2000s, late 90s. It was just us, Minnesota Morris, maybe Cumberland's, like literally could count on one hand how many college programs there were for women. And now there's over 80 college programs for women, and so on top of that, I don't know the exact statistics, but someone had said that in the early 2000s, it went from like 800 girls wrestling to now we have like over 22,000, girls wrestling right now. And
so I hope that it never goes to one place. I wouldn't, I just think competition is good, and it's going to bring a win for the wrestling community. Like if you remember, flow used to be the video and track used to be the software. And when each of the other ones invaded that space, you're forced to be innovative, you're forced to grow, and then you are forced to compete with what you charge, what you charge for your service. I do think, at least it seems like right now, subscription and pay-per-view models are a thing, and I believe that they're good, just because, at Flow, in a couple years, once the subscription model came, then so many more events, so much better production quality. You have to have some money coming in. Otherwise, everything's going to be stagnant or poor quality. But at the same time, it's important that there's content accessible for free. So, otherwise you can have a problem where it's just only diehard wrestling fans. We need to get new eyeballs on the sport. Nobody's ever just going to pay for something before they know that they love it. I believe that wrestling's the kind of thing that once you're around it for a little bit of time, it's going to hook you.
Yeah, because now obviously all the scrambling's coming into effect. The last 10 years ago or 15 years ago, nobody scrambled like they do now. So now it's learning how to finish that single leg on the mat, because everybody jams ahead, everybody squares up. Now everybody's doing the shin whizzer and all the funky moves, the step overs, the rolls, stuff like that. So being able to finish, and it's kind of going a little bit, I think it's actually going a little bit back the other way. So finishing on the mat is becoming harder. So now people are hitting the head. Now everybody's trying to get to their feet as much as possible, which you should always do. But I think wrestling just evolves and changes with the times. I mean, you can go back and watch videotapes of just 10 years, 8 years ago, and watch it now, and you're like, God, those guys they were good then, but they would, stuff wouldn't work.
So from a more personal standpoint, whenever you heard that the Olympics were postponed for a year, what was your reaction? I mean, how did you feel, I guess, as the coach?
I guess when the actual announcement came out, we were kind of expecting it because of what had been happening leading up until that point. But if you think back from like 2.5 months ago until now, I apologize for the sounds here.
It's all right. This show is raw. Yeah.
Yeah, we got real life happening in the background. Right. So
she's not happy about the Olympics.
No, that's about how I felt. Is about what my daughter is saying. You bring up a good point too. Is knowing those things and having like I don't really come up with execution plans like this is how you're going to wrestle. Right down to the T. Right. I think we know who and what we are, and we work as hard as we can, because that just cements confidence in what we're about to do. And then I think another thing that's really important with regard to what the comment you just made was, is don't worry about it, right? A lot of times we invite pressure and, competition anxiety, or whatever you want to call it, because we're focused on externals, and focused on who that guy is and what that guy did. Or we try to apply the transitive property to our sport. Well, he beat him, I beat him by 4 and he beat him by 7. That doesn't, that doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't, because he has different geometry than I do. He's taller and leaner and I'm shorter and stockier, whatever, right? And those style matchups. And so, or you're thinking about, well, it's the state tournament finals and there's all these people and my family's here. Don't worry about those things. It's no different than the very first match that you ever wrestled in your life. That first match was the most important one you ever wrestled at that point. Just go out and wrestle.
Gable's presence was more motivating, and a look from Gable was more motivating than he wasn't a rah, scream and yell type of guy. At least my perception was it was just a quiet intensity and a focus and a level of expectation. And then you had Jay Robinson, who was really kind of the cutting edge technical guy that was involved in things. And then you had a guy like Mark Johnson who worked with John Marks. Mark Johnson looked like Clark Kent, man. Big old good looking guy. So he was doing a lot of the face-to-face things with people. And, you got to remember Gable was still learning his craft at the time. So you had all three of those guys and those personalities together, and they just really worked well at going, what does Lubanik need? What does Tim Riley need? What does that guy need? And providing those things for those guys on an individual basis. So sometimes I think people, that the easy thing to do is look at it and go, well, they just outworked everybody. I'll just push my guys and I'll outwork everybody. I don't think that was the secret. I think the secret was Gable's ability to motivate you, and then the teamwork that those guys had as coaches was pretty special at that time.
Well, I think what you see happen over the course of a season in wrestling rooms is when guys start to get comfortable, like you said, they kind of start wrestling to a script, because they know they kind of have it figured out who they should beat, who beats them, and who's kind of like a 50-50. And I think that's a dangerous game to get in, because unless you're like trying to beat the guys that are beating you, then I don't think you're going to get much better. And you almost get like scared to go off script. And I don't know. I think a lot of it comes down to habits in practice. And I think a lot of them are mindless that kids do. But I think as a coach, I think really communicating with athletes, I think is one of those things that sounds so basic, but I think gets looked all the time and way undervalued. And like communicating on a weekly, even a daily basis of like kind of what you're expecting from. It's one thing to say it to the team, but to have individual conversations with kids like, hey, I think you need to have this goal this week. Like, let's work on this. And then if you kind of narrow their focus a little bit, give them a goal, I think they're more prone to like kind of be a little more tunnel vision. And I think when you're trying to improve your wrestling and kind of catch the guys in front of you, I think you need to work on a couple things at once.
But at the same time, this time off actually is pretty good for both parties involved. What I mean by that is these kids are getting a break from everything. You know, they're getting to do something other than just being on the mat. They're getting to have a normal high school life, which is good.
Yeah.
A lot of wrestlers are not multi-sport athletes. So them getting a 3-month hiatus from this is just like them getting a 3-month hiatus by playing football or going out for track. I mean, it's the same thing. Personally, I think one of my biggest things that hurt me in college is I didn't have a 3-month hiatus that I had in high school where I had my football season. You know, I would come into wrestling season like refreshed, where I could push through the folk style and then still be ready to go for freestyle and Greco during the summer. I'll be honest, I mean, I was broke this past year, extremely broke. And I'll be the first one to admit, I think I have this past year turned a little soft in my coaching tendencies, just in the way that I have gone about things versus how I have gone about things in the past. But this whole break that we've had has not only refreshed me, but then having things, you know, I've had free time where I've been able to reread Tim Grover's book, who was Michael Jordan's trainer, been able to watch this Michael Jordan documentary. It's kind of reinvigorated me to realize, like, man, the things that I was doing in the past are fine.
One, turn that sound off. This is not a movie. And if you have that sound on when you're watching yourself wrestle, you're distracted by it, the noise and the cheering and the whatever, or the coach yelling, or what. Turn it off. The second thing is, again, it's not rocket science. Make it simple. How did I lose? Well, I didn't get enough sleep. No. I didn't eat right. No. Oh, I should have finished the single. You're getting closer. The reason you lost is the guy scored more points than you. End of discussion. Second, how did he score the points? Find that. How did he score? Fix that problem. Second, how did you score? How many times did you shoot? How many times did you get to the leg? And how many times did you finish? Solve the problem. Just like that. Turn the sound off. Watch it. He scored more points than me. How did he score them? Second, what could I do to get better in that position? Fix that problem. Next, if nobody can score on you, you're pretty doggone tough. Then you advance to how many times did I shoot? How many times did I touch the leg? How many times did I get to the leg? And how many times did I finish on the leg? There is no question in my mind that it's the toughest sport there is. And it doesn't make any difference if you're a high school wrestler, college wrestler, or an elite wrestler. You're all wrestlers. You all have been in that hot room. You all have banged your head. You all have hurt your shoulder. You all have had your knee twisted. You are all. And I get a kick out of so many people I meet now, and they say, yeah, I used to be a wrestler. No, man, you're a wrestler. Once you wrestle, you're a wrestler for the rest of your life. And you understand what those other wrestlers are going through. That's a huge, I would say that's a huge common denominator for wrestlers. Whether you like them or not, you know, man, those guys have, it's tough duty and it's hard. And not just in the room, but eating and cutting the weight and doing all the other things that make the sport so demanding. I mean, and it made no difference whether they were high school athletes or college athletes or elite athletes. You know, they just got better at what they did, but they all went through the grind.